All right, so everyone seems to be getting more or less the hang of the debugger. I just want to get into this this algorithm here. So we have the string. What was AABB? Can someone read this thing to me?
CD AAAABB.
All right. And so one of the question was, at which positions does the count increase? So where does the counter increase?
Whenever it changes from...
Yeah, so imagine there was a 2 at, what's this one here? Just tell me the indexes. If you watched it, you must have seen it, right? When I was 2,
4.
it increased?
4. Let's see.
Okay, I'm going to write the numbers. Yes, at 6 it increased. And at 10 it increased. Right? And now when we look at these, now it becomes possible to see the logical pattern when it increases. So it increases whenever it finds identical looking characters preceded by a different looking one. And when you look at the code, you'll see the logic for that, right? It says if the character at I equals the character at I plus 1, and then there was an nested if that says if it's different from the one before, then it increases. And that's actually a good strategy to make sure that you're not increasing here in some vast number of repeated characters, right? If you are, for example, here, then you wouldn't increase because, yes, the next one is the same, but the previous one is also the same, and that means you must have already counted it. So we're looking at this trigger that says, what's the beginning of the repeated group? You can tell the beginning by saying there's something different before. Now, that little trick of saying, let's look at that there's something different before, works almost everywhere, except where? At the very beginning. Right? So over here, this AA isn't caught because, well, maybe for a slightly different reason. If you looked at the loop started at 1. Why did the loop start at 1?
Because we told it to start at 1.
Right, well, we was the implementer of this thing.
Yeah.
So why did that person start with 1? Yeah?
So it wouldn't have a tear to the second if statement.
Right, because in all likelihood, what that person did is originally did start at 0, and then what did the code say? If the zeros and the first are the same, and then it would check the minus first, and what happens when you check the minus first? Your program dies. The entire program now lies on the floor, bleeding and dead, right? And so probably that person noticed that, and after kicking the corpse, decided to increment the I to 1, and then that would never happen again. Students do this. Right? They find that there is a problem with it, and then they say, well, let's make sure that particular problem doesn't reoccur. By only starting at 1, you never have that problem. But now we also lost something, the ability to deal with the repetition right at the beginning. So we need to come up with some other way of recognizing repetition at the beginning. How do you recognize repetition at the beginning?
Compare it to the beginning, but then you have to skip. If it is true, you have to skip over the index so you don't count it twice. Is that?
I get it.
Never mind.
No, but
You're gonna have to compare in front of you, but then iterate, start over again.
So there were 2 different approaches that I've seen. It's one approach made it a special case before entering the loop, and the other approach changed the thing inside the loop. They're both good. Which one do you want to see first?
Well, the one outside is like really. I thought you wanted us to do it inside the loop.
No. Did I say that I wanted you to do inside the loop?
No, that's what I thought.
Oh, no,
The
no,
one before is really easy.
Okay, so there's a really that is now being pronounced as really easy. Let's look at the really easy one. So the really easy one is to say, well, let's just see before entering even this wretched loop. Let's just check whether the special case occurs. How do I recognize the special case? How do I recognize this special case? Describe to me in English. I'm just not going to write pseudocode. What's the special case that I'm having something that starts with a repetition at the beginning?
The character at 0 equals the character at 1.
Character at 0 and 1 are what? The same? Different?
Same.
The same.
Are the same. Then what should I do?
C plus plus.
C++. Exactly. Okay? And then you go on in the for loop with the regular old way. This will work. Right? The for loop only starts at 1. And so at this point here, if there was, say, an A at the beginning, for loop starts at 1, it would not count this as the beginning of a repetition because it sees there's already an A, and so we're not incrementing any more than we're supposed to. Everything will be fine. We'll simply count our, get our initial increment from this rule, and then we enter the for loop that uses the regular old rule. So that's beautiful. There's just one little thing. The for loop had an endearing feature. Where does it end? Length minus 1, length
Yeah.
plus 1, length minus
Length
2.
minus
Minus
one.
1.
So if I is less than the length minus 1. And this is common for these loops. Oftentimes these things go wrong when you deal with very short strings. The empty